Good afternoon and welcome to QT Connect Cafe, where we tell everything queer and tech. I'm Naufel, co-founder at QueerTech, and your host. As usual, QueerTech is based on Tehuantepec in Montreal, and we would like to begin by acknowledging that QueerTech is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kainai Nation is recognized as the custodians of the land and the waters on which we gather today. I would like, as usual, to start by thanking RBC for presenting this QT Connect live streams. I also want to thank our partners, annual partners, Sage, Unity Technology, Sun Life Financial, Oro Health, and Osedia for supporting this live stream and series. As you all know, QueerTech has a job board that is live today and has a lot of partners on it for those who are looking for a job in tech or looking to advance your career in tech. You can go to queertech.org/jobs. And if you need any help to connect with one of our partners companies or need any advice, email me at naufel@queertech.ca. We'll be happy to help and connect you. So before we get started with our guest today, for those who have questions or comments throughout the duration of our live stream, you can write your questions or comments on the comments box in the social media outlet you are watching us on. You can also tag anyone who is looking for a job in tech or looking to advance their career in tech and need directions, inspiration, and or motivation. Just be aware that we might show your comments or questions on this live stream. For those who love what we do and want to support us, you can donate on our website, queertech.org. Thank you so much for all those who support QueerTech every month or during these events. Your supports go a long way. So our guest today is Eli Holtz. Eli is an open out trans man who works in tech. He is a senior go-to-market manager currently, but have worn many hats across various parts of Shopify, ranging from customer success to research to project management to operations to leadership. So Eli is also the co-founder of Queeriosity, the LGBTQ Social Card Game, which is a social game that's community focused. He's obsessed with product, research, and come at everything with a data mindset. Enneagram type 7. Eli got a big idea and want to share them with the world. And we always love leaders like that. And also Eli have 2 cats and love to paint, write, and play video games. So I'm really excited to welcome Eli to the show. And you may reveal yourself now. Hi, Eli.
Hello.
You feel like it's like walking on the red carpet with all the cameras?
I know, with all the flashing, I was like, oh, I'm a celebrity.
Welcome to QT Connect Cafe. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day. It's lunchtime and just ready to get going.
I know we're excited in Montreal. It's finally a little bit warm this week. So we're enjoying a lot of our outdoor activities.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to have you on the show and share your experience and wisdom with us in the next 50 minutes. Before I start, I would like to say that my name is Naufel and I use my pronoun he and him. And what pronouns do you go with, Eli?
My pronouns are he, him as well.
Wonderful. So, before we dive into your rich professional experience and talk about your career, we want to get to know you a little bit. And so, I want to kind of start and go back to the beginning of your life, and where were you born? Where did your story begin? And like, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in the States, actually. And I was born in North Carolina, and I lived there for about maybe 9 or 10 years. And then I ended up moving to Canada. My mom remarried, and I ended up living in Timmins, Ontario, which, if you're familiar, is north and cold. And I lived there for about 10 years. And now I'm in Toronto, and it's been wild. Um, yeah. Does that cover
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
geography? Is it? Yes.
I went to Timmins a long time ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm kidding.
I know. I went to Sudbury, Timmins. I went to Northern Ontario. There's a lot of beautiful nature out there once you leave the city.
There is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, where did you go to school?
So, I mean, I've been to school in several different places, but my most recent high school experience, funnily enough, was at an all-girls private school. So like the classic trans man, ironic education.
Yeah.
I also went to the University of Toronto for English, but because my mom was actually quite sick, I had to drop out. So I didn't actually finish my degree, which is, it's unfortunate, but ultimately, I'm on the right track now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'm sorry about your mom.
No, she's fine now, which is great.
Right.
So, yeah.
Good to hear. So, talk to us a little bit about this, right? In our industry in tech, the diversity is a big issue, and especially when it comes to trans and non-binary folks, and so we love that you're out there and visible and talk about it. And so talk to us a little bit about some of that pivotal life moments that impacted your life, from being in an all-girls school, going to university, and share with us some of
Yeah, definitely. So I didn't realize that I was trans until I guess I started thinking about it maybe when I was like 22, 23, something along those lines. And like looking back, I'm just like, how did I miss it? There's so many things that like I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But that's when I started to explore my gender a little bit. At 22, I started wearing binders. I started just like playing around with like pronouns, and I identified as genderqueer for quite some time. Just sort of feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not, fully trans, whatever that means. It's definitely a spectrum. So I don't even really know what that meant to me at the time. But over time, it just made more and more sense to me to take the steps to change my pronouns and how I identify and make that big life shift. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a process, right? I think a lot of us, it's a multi-step process, and it also doesn't, start or stop somewhere. It's a continuous process. That's a renewal of our sexual orientation and gender, and how do we define ourselves. And as we grow up, that can change at any moment as we learn about ourselves and we realize. And so when did you started your transition, and when did you complete it?
Yeah, so I started my transition, it would have been, I guess, 2016. Wow, that's like 5 years ago. So I had top surgery first before I started taking testosterone, because at that point I had just identified as genderqueer with they them pronouns, And then after getting top surgery, I was like, no, yeah, this feels pretty right. And I was sort of bummed out when people would misgender me, which, at the time, she, they were my pronouns. So the fact that I even thought that she was misgendering is sort of like it's a bit of a hint for me. So yeah. Sorry, what was the question again? I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no worries. It's just like, when did you start the transition?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so 5 years ago, and then I started with my testosterone, and I had been honestly looking at names since I've been like 22, and I've been like playing around with them and trying different ones. Again, that should have been a bit of a tip for me. Like if I'm looking at male names and pronouns, that maybe that's the thing. But again, a spectrum. So I eventually started using Eli as my preferred name, and transitioned at work, which was like a huge, pivotal, and frightening moment for me, because really all of my friends are queer. So coming out to them was nothing really. It was just like, oh, I'm trans. And they were like, cool, great. What's your name? Cool. Yeah. And at work, it's like, I don't know all of these people. There's 10,000 of you, and this is frightening. So yeah, but it went really well, and everyone was super supportive at work, and that was a great process for me. And yeah.
That's great. So at the age of 22, where were you working?
Oh God, I was working just like I don't want to say the worst job, because there are definitely worse jobs out there. But I was working in a call center, and I was doing sales, and like the commission structure was super, super low. Like it was made so that they wouldn't have to pay us commission basically, and minimum wage. It was just like not the best working experience, but it really was a great entry-level role for me, where I learned the value of structure and how to communicate effectively, and positioning things with people. So it's, even the worst jobs, you really take a lot from it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Was that when you started your transition? Were you at that job?
I didn't like start my transition when I was there. I would say that I like began exploring. So I like cut my hair, and I was binding. So like in ways I was exploring the ways of presenting on the trans spectrum. So I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Questionably. Yeah.
But it was still okay. And so walk us through your career, kind of professional career after that job. What are the different roles, companies, or type of companies you worked at before you got into Shopify?
Yeah. So before I worked at Shopify, I worked in mostly customer service roles and sales roles. So I worked in retail at a thrift store. I worked in sales for a company that sold real estate, websites, just, various different roles that all, were accessible, I guess, is the entry-level roles. And so this was the time that my mom was quite sick, and I needed a remote job because I needed to be able to travel back and forth. And I stumbled across Shopify, which their customer service rep role was completely remote. And so began my journey at Shopify. It was great opportunities.
That's wonderful. I love you mentioned the word accessible for these roles, and that's how we're starting to look at a lot of and encourage a lot of folks who are outside of the tech industry that want to get into tech, and either because they need a remote job, a family situation, or personal result, but also if they want to start that career, right? And customer support sales roles are we call them a low barrier to entry, because you don't need to do boot camp class. You don't have to, people don't have the money to spend in doing these classes and things. So that's really great. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Before I jump into, and you kind of hinted why you decided to work at Shopify, but were you looking at other companies at that moment? Remote was important to you. Was there other criteria in terms of, maybe because you were transitioning, you want a safe environment? Like, were there any of these things you've been thinking about picking the company that you want to work at?
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I had thought about. I really enjoyed the mission of the company, but like I boiled it down to at that time, I boiled it down to like good and bad. Like, is this company helping people? And ultimately, I felt like, yes, this is like a good company, so I can feel good about working here. That was a very simple way of viewing it at the time. The benefits were really good and just kind of touched on what I needed. And the product, like I had, it was just something that my friends and I would always sit around and we'd be like, oh, we should invent that. Like, let's invent it. Why doesn't somebody make that or sell that? And I could see myself in almost every one of the merchants at Shopify. So, yeah, it's absolutely a great company. And then touching on your first point around customer service and it being like an accessible role, and same with sales, is there's nobody at a company that knows the product like a customer service representative or a sales representative, because you have to so deeply understand the product offerings in order to support or sell it so deeply that like you are the person who has that ability to see the holistic product.
Absolutely.
And that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And this is, I got into tech through sales, and I learned so much about technology through sales. And I realized also, I was doing, when you work at startups, early stage, you do sales and you do a little of customer service. And I loved also how deeper I learned about technologies, right? Things that I would have not been exposed to. And it's really good because I think we'll see what that experience led you to kind of where you are today. And so, you mentioned you wear many hats at Shopify. So walk us through, what are the different roles that you have and what's that time frame like?
Yeah, definitely. I'll walk you through the different roles that I've had. I'll also add in some of the roles that I applied for and didn't get, and just like how that shaped my journey as well, because I think that's important. So I started out as a customer service representative. I did that for a year and a half. And I mean, I'll be completely honest, that is one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. Some people will be like, no, man, like you're a senior go-to-market manager. That's a hard job. No, like being on all the time, being resourceful, being, kind when people might not be, that it's hard. It's a hard job. So I did that for a year and a half. And at about a year, I started applying for talent acquisition roles. So like a recruiting job internally. And I made it to the third interview 3 separate times and got rejected 3 separate times, which naturally was devastating to me at the time. On the third time, I finally took a step back and said, like, I need to do something different. Like, this is not helping me keep trying the same thing over and over. So I took a step back and I started my first business, which was just if you're familiar with print on demand, it's just like a print on demand clothing company. And going through the process of ideating and launching my own business was eye-opening in a huge way. And I really opened myself up to other opportunities and stumbled into a different role at the company, which was a research and enablement team. It's called the Product Support Network, and the team doesn't really exist anywhere outside of Shopify, but that was just truly the best team. So we basically would funnel merchant feedback, so the feedback from our users at Shopify, to the product team and say, like, hey, there are 50% of people who are using this product that they don't know what this button does, or this is broken for them. And the product team would kind of resolve issues based on that. Then I did that for a while, loved it. I started leading that team. I led that team for 2.5 years, where I worked. I basically owned the communications improvement process and the operations for the team, which was great. And then I moved into the marketing world, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's really great to see that even after the 3 roles you applied, a lot of people would have just quit, right? And they would have left Shopify and find something else. Maybe continue to try until you fit in, but it's also taking a step back and thinking, it's not just that. It's not the people who hire for these roles understand what makes you successful in a role and what makes you not successful in a role. And sometimes we forget that. Something that's really I talk to a lot of our community about is always ask for feedback after the interview, especially if you don't get accepted. A lot of people get a rejection email from a talent acquisition person, HR person, and then they kind of just get bumped about it and move on. And I'm like, that is an amazing moment to ask. And maybe you're not going to get answers all the time, but make it just part of that process of saying, hey, thanks. Like, I understand. I'm curious, why did I not fit the role? What is it that you didn't see in me? And so that is a very important piece of information to help you assess, great, well, is this going to apply for all these roles as I apply, or is this just specific to this position and this company? So I like it's very important to look at that do a retro with yourself, right? So great. And so let's talk a little bit about your senior go-to-market manager. This is not a position that people are often familiar with. So tell us a little bit, like, what is that role entail? What do you do every day?
Yeah. So go-to-market is the process of just like bringing a product that is finished being built, bringing that to the market. So what that means from a marketing perspective is just like, okay, what avenues can we talk about this product in? That could be like, different social capacities, like social media. That could be sending out a launch email. That could be including it in internal communications that we, like we're sending out, sorry, not internal communications, like ongoing campaigns that we've got going. It's just basically like, how can we get as many people to know about this product and use it as possible, if it's a good fit for them. So it's a great and really exciting role, because it's just kind of like the fruition of so many people's hard work putting this product together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really great. And in terms of like a career trajectory, do you think about like where this role can lead you next? Like what kind of positions or roles that you see yourself in? Like what's that career trajectory for someone with this background?
Yeah, absolutely. So in tech, everything's transferable, in my opinion. So really, the sky's the limit in my opinion. From a trying to think, like if I wanted to get further into product, I absolutely could. Like this is transferable to product management. I have past leadership as well. So like my leadership could bring me into a lead role here. If I didn't have that past leadership, I could probably work towards a lead role here as well. I've spoken to a couple of different teams. Oh man, did you hear that? I just broke something for sure. I've spoken to a couple of different teams, and there are transferable skills pretty much everywhere you look for it. Like I could see myself working in the the market research team, because I have an understanding of the gaps that are missing. There's so much.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think like understanding how to bring a product to a market and grow it is key thing. But as you said, I think that's one of the things I also really enjoy working in the tech industry, is that we don't have that traditional career path like you do at your, a lot of the traditional industries or businesses. You can move according to interest and move around. I've seen people who start at customer support and became product managers and learn how to code and became a software developers. So there's really different ways, and I think that's one of the beauty of working in tech. We have a question that came in interesting from the community, and I have something similar. Talking a little bit about how one of the questions people ask me is like, well, as a queer person, or if you're a trans, non-binary person, how do you pick the right company? When I interview, or even before I talk to them, how do I know this is a safe space for me? This is a great organization that I can thrive in and not feel discriminated against.
Right.
More you think?
I would say I would almost take a step back from that question and look a little bit at what are you looking for? What is the right space for you? Because it's different for other people. Like some people who are trans and want to be stealth, maybe they actually don't, maybe they're not looking for a super safe environment. Maybe some people are looking for the most, I don't even want to use the word progressive because it's the way it should be, but like maybe they want like an entirely queer company. So determine what it is that you need and you want first. And then I would probably, I'm a very like process driven person. So I'd probably put together like a strategy on how to figure out if this place was a good fit. One is I would check in with a couple of people who worked there. See if I had any like LinkedIn connections, determine what the culture was. Two, I would probably determine like, I don't know, maybe I'd check like Glassdoor or some like Facebook groups. I would probably figure out maybe like if there were any questions that were like left in my mind. So let's say I reviewed all the Glassdoor reviews and talked to a couple of people, and I was like, okay, so this is what the culture is, but I'm a little concerned about, this one thing. That would be the pointed question I'd ask in the interview, versus asking really general questions in an interview, because somebody who works in recruiting, as much as their job is to interview you, their job is also to sell you on the company. So you keep your questions to them as pointed and direct as possible, so that they're not giving you the, oh yeah, we have an LGBTQ group, which like, because what you have to, or people think you suck.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I really love that. A couple of things to also add for my process. Looking at the values of the company and how do they fit with my values, and am I aligned with this? I think a lot of time people start looking for jobs without going through that process, also saying, well, what type of industry and product I want to work on, right? And that really helps narrow the list when you say, these are the things that excite me the most, and this is the type of industries that I really want to contribute to, and then align the values, and then you can do the interview. And this is something also when people go do their first interview, they always think that they're there to be asked questions, and I'm like, you also have prepared questions. Don't go to that first interview without, and ask about things, right, that matters to you. And there are things that you can ask about, like, do they have an affinity group or employee resource group is one way to see, well, where they are at that diversity journey. But also ask about the benefits. Are they for same-sex marriage? Do they have benefits for people who want to transition? Do they have mental health budget? Do they have they done diversity training? So there's like a list that people can always ask at these companies, and as you get answers, a lot of them is a yes or no question. So it's very good, because either you have the benefits or you don't, right? Either you have the resource, and those are very good. So a recruiter can't go around and create a story. It's a yes and no. So those are ways that people from our community can ask. And you talked about your process-oriented and strategic in how you look at some of this role, but also in terms of just thinking about your career when you were, you did customer success and you kind of moved to different roles. Would you, like, what kind of skills and competencies were you thinking to develop as you move between these roles? Did you have a clear path in your mind, or was it one job at a time, and you've looked at where you want to go on this? Like, how did that work throughout your career?
Yeah. So what I've worked on is, so when I was in customer service, I think the main thing to do when you're in an entry level role is be as driven and open to opportunities as possible, and be resourceful, be receptive to feedback, and build relationships. Those are like the big things that I did when I was in an entry level role, because if you are a valuable person and you're bringing value to conversations, you're building really strong relationships, you'll start to learn from people like, oh, okay, like this, this role actually needs this thing, or this one person who I'm friends with who has been promoted 3 times, they seem to be doing this one thing every Monday. Why am I should probably do that. And it's like you slowly start to learn these tips and tricks, and it's different for everybody and what you pick up. But what I've actually done going from like that role was pretty general because I was still just feeling it out. But in the roles that I've been promoted into, I'm really focused on being the best possible person at that role in particular, and solving as many problems as I can. So I look at as many opportunities in the role as I can and fix them. And instead of looking outwards, I'm building these skills by looking inwards and having that direct impact. But I can say that like my communications plan that I put together for my last role is 100% an asset in my current role. And I didn't know that at the time, and I wasn't building it for it to be transferable. But it is, because tech is so interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. And this is one of the things that, again, career is not a linear process. A lot of people feel like, I'm going to go to school, study this thing, graduate, and work. And we all know from the data that those things, people study things, end up working in something different, and end up with a complete different career. And so that sense of renewal and learning new things, I think this is where my recommendation for a lot of people who want to get into tech and thrive in tech is that you learn things. The more things you do, and the more flexible is your skills and competencies, and you develop, it really allows you to do a lot of roles. And especially if you work for an early stage startup where you want to have different skills and competencies, because you can work in sales, and then you do customer success, and then you do account management, and then you do product work, because now you understand what the customer need, the problems they have. So it really depends. So it's important to kind of keep that and just be like an active learner, as we know, like people forget to build that. And so one question also that comes often when we talk with companies, and it has two parts to it. First is, what can companies today and tech companies do today to create a more welcoming environment for trans, non-binary folks, in terms of, like, if we think like, are there HR policies or policies in general that companies can institute to create that? And in the second part, we'll talk about individuals and colleagues and people and what they can do if someone starts to transition at the workplace, and how can they be supporting that person.
Right. In regards to the first question, I always hesitate a little bit to answer on this, because I know that I don't speak for the entire community. And so I would worry about saying like, oh, it would be great if we did this, and knowing and not thinking about the implications of it. So I just want to caveat whatever I say with the fact that this is, something I'm just thinking of right now. I think, like, first and foremost, having an active diversity, equity, and equality and inclusion team is like the most important thing that a company can have. And I think that lays the foundation for having a safe environment for anyone who is marginalized in a marginalized community. So if you don't have that and you're listening, get on it. That's all I'm saying. I think that there are probably processes that can be put in place.
Some of the things that comes to mind that I've seen in terms of HR policies, I think there are like general ones that companies should have in terms of anti-discrimination, sexual harassment, things like that people should educate on, that are more pro general policies. I think benefit policies are very important, extending them to like same-sex partners, and also adding things like supporting if there is anyone who wants to transition at the work, that there is also part of that policy, and also like having a mental health budget is very important. I think queer people I think everyone can use it in general today. Like having that is important, but I think also when people are transitioning, there is a lot you deal with in terms of society and family and workplace, and so having that support will be important. In terms of colleagues, if you, Eli, go back in when you were going through that process, what are some of the things you wished people in your work environment would do to support you?
Yeah, I would say that formal leadership training around the like talent processes or the HR processes involved with folks that are experiencing anything, but transitioning or changing pronouns or anything along those lines. I think that from a process perspective, that's valuable. I think culturally, it seems to be something that's like, I don't want to say unspoken, but it's like, okay, we put this process in place and we never talk about it again. And I'm not saying that that's at Shopify. I'm just saying in general that seems to be the way that it is for folks who are on the gender spectrum or queer. So just like really addressing the culture around LGBTQ folks in the workplace, and being really open and making and normalizing. I hate that word, but like normalizing the ability to have conversations around, your partner or your like testosterone shot. If Jenny can talk about her, vitamins that she's taking, why can't I talk about my testosterone, kind of thing? Without
normalizing the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. No, education is really number one. A lot of the tech companies that we work with, we do a training that we call it allyship training, that really goes through talking about it, right? Like a lot of people feel like, oh, I know some of the things, but really educating people on just what it means to be a good ally to our LGBTQ2S+ community and also other folks is really important. And so we do that at QueerTech also. So if anyone also listening and interested, this is something that we could support with. So I want to go, there's a couple of things I want to touch base before we end today. One is, this is when we were preparing, a lot of our team was excited to think, how does your queerness intersect with your professional experience? And what we mean is that, how does your identity today impact your being a manager or being a colleague or working, because a lot of time we don't think that because we're different and we can use that to our advantage, right? In the recruitment process, but also there is something you bring to the table that maybe not a lot of people have been through that experience, so don't have that. So what are some of those?
There are a lot. There are some that are more positive, and then there are some that are a little shocking, and I can touch on both, but the more positive one is just, you know, the empathy that I have built for so many different, you know, queer folks, and I've been really, I think really deeply about equity in the workplace, and just, you know, how people like me or otherwise, you know, how difficult it is to kind of get your way through the career ladder when you don't have the opportunities or maybe the funds or anything along those lines. And being part of a marginalized community is definitely, it adds to those things. So the actually completely just lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
Yeah. So
I was going somewhere with it, I swear.
Yeah, no worries. And you started pretty good with it. What are some of the like? How does your queerness or the experience that you went through as a trans person can impact your professional experience, being a manager, a colleague,
Right?
And
Yeah.
you know, how do these different perspectives play out on a day-to-day?
Right. So yeah. So empathy. Always keeping equity top of mind is really important for me. I was working for a little bit on like a mentorship program that was like specifically targeted at pairing folks from our ERGs, like our employee resource groups, with other people in the company. Unfortunately, I had to deprioritize that project due to just the sheer volume of work, but it was taken on by the HR team, so that's great. I think that there are definitely, it's interesting having been on two separate sides of things. So like, I definitely know the experience of working at Shopify as somebody who is female presenting. And I know the experience of working at Shopify as somebody who is male presenting and passing. And then I also know the experience of somebody who works at Shopify and doesn't pass, and those experiences as well. So there's a lot of baggage, but a lot of empathy that comes along with that. There's a lot of awareness. I'm very careful in the way that I communicate with people. I'm very cognizant of pronouns and identity. Yeah, I would say empathy is like the biggest, now that I'm like trying to think of all of pieces, that's the big one. The like maybe not so positive side effect of being trans in the workplace is like going from being a woman in the workplace to being a man in the workplace, and how I need to change how I communicate and my body language, because what was once assertive as a woman is now aggressive as a man. What was once confident as a woman is now arrogant as a man. Jokes that were, you know, well-meaning and funny are now potentially offensive, and it's all very, it's really interesting. So I've had to take many steps back after conversations and like really analyze, like, whoa, okay, that was not, I felt the body language, I felt their perception of me change, and why, and I need to like do a lot of work on that. So yeah, that's a weird one for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you know, and kind of our last questions. You're an entrepreneur at heart. There is a lot of entrepreneurship experiences that you had. One is curiosity and queeriosity. So tell us, what is it, and why did you decide to make an LGBTQ plus card game?
Yeah, so one of my friends and I, we like came up with this game idea over the pandemic. We were we were just like really lonely is the first thing. But the second thing was that this was early on in the pandemic, and everybody was saying like, you know, hey, let's hop on a Zoom call and let's play, you know, whatever other card game it happened to be at the time. And we noticed, man, these are all just like really made for straight people, with queer folks as like a secondary person to use it, if at all. Like we may not have even been considered. And so within a week, we put the business brief together, which was awesome. And within a couple of months, we were shipping, like sending off the information to our manufacturers. And yeah, we've been selling it ever since, which is great.
That's wonderful. And, you know, as you see, a lot of people are asking, where can we get these guards, or where can you order them from?
Yeah, let me just, how do I comment in this comment section? I have
You
no
can
idea.
put it in the private chat and we'll share it with the
Okay,
community.
perfect. Yeah, so if you go to queeriosity.co, not .com, .co, so co, that's our website. You can give us a follow on Instagram, or you know, feel free to follow us on Facebook too. It's not quite as exciting, but Instagram is a good one. And we're so happy to hear from everyone. We're so happy to see stories. You know, send us videos, tell us about the game, because we love to see that people love it and what they're learning about each other and themselves. And
Wonderful. I'm excited also to get the game and
yeah.
play it. Eli, thank you very much for joining us today, sharing your experience and wisdom, and it's been a pleasure having you here. And so before we close in today, you know, I always look at our conversation with our guests and what I learned. And I think one thing that comes to me today is resilience. You know, looking at going through your career, that don't give up on the career. I think it's not a linear path. Again, it's a very windy road that can be very complex, but taking the time to reflect on why things are not working, asking the question to the people that you're interviewing with, these are really key things that can help you carve the path to either roles that you want to do and excited for, or help you figure out a different career path that sometimes you didn't think about. If you want to stay connected with Eli, you can find him on LinkedIn. And you see the link online, and ask any questions. And for those who are interested for our next QT Connect Cafe show, it will be on March 10 at noon. Stay tuned. We'll be announcing our speaker very soon. Also, for those interested to network with the community and come hang out with us, we have our monthly meetup. It's going to be a virtual meetup, hopefully one of the last ones before we go back in person. It's on February 22nd at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I hope that you're all doing well, and stay in touch.
Thank you.